Welcome to A Guide to Every Deck in EDH. Today we're looking at Duke Ulder Ravengard. This is a 6-mana Boros commander. It's a 5/5 human noble soldier with, at the beginning of combat on your turn, another target creature you control gains haste and myriad until end of turn. And if you're not familiar with myriad, that is, whenever it attacks for each opponent other than the defending player, you may create a token that's a copy of that creature that's tapped and attacking that player or a planeswalker they control. Exile the tokens at end of combat. So if you attack one of your opponents with a creature with myriad, you create a token for each other player and the token is attacking that player. So clearly we're going to want creatures that either have ETB or leaves triggers that we can multiply with Duke Ulder Ravengard for the purposes of either accruing advantage or just beating down our opponents really hard. So to that end, we do have some tiny cantripping creatures in the form of things like Spirited Companion, Helpful Hunter, and Charming Scoundrel to rummage or just straight up draw cards or make treasure tokens. Or when we don't have anything else going on, we also have some big beats with Terror of the Peaks. So if you create multiple copies of Terror of the Peaks, they'll all trigger off of each other. And we've got Cathar's Crusade because we're also putting a bunch of tokens into play and therefore getting at least 2 counters on all of our guys. Additionally, since we're going to be playing a lot of creatures, we do have the cards like Enduring Innocence and Welcoming Vampire to trigger off of creatures entering and draw cards. We've also got a little bit of ways of pushing through, so Sword of Fire and Ice, but this is mainly as a way for Stoneforge to be able to find stuff. And as stated, here's the Stoneforge, so we can potentially find up to 3 equipment, so we need at least 3 equipment in our deck for when we go and Myriad the Stoneforge. We've got token multiplying spells with Anointed Procession, although do note that the additional copies of the tokens will still exile at end of turn. They are still bound by the Myriad restriction. And then aside from those, we've got cards like Atsushi, which can either impulse draw or create treasures. We've got Dualcaster Mage and Molten Duplication for that combo, and we've got some additional extra combat stuff with Port Razor to potentially go infinite. We also have Eomer, Marshal of Rohan, with whenever one or more other attacking legendary creatures you control die, untap all creatures you control. And after this phase, there is an additional combat phase. The ability triggers only once each turn, but because you're making legendary token copies of it, the legendary tokens are dying and thus triggering. And finally, Karmic Guide to get stuff back from the graveyard. We've got a little bit of fast mana to try to get Duke Ulder out faster than having to wait all the way to turn 6 to get him. Also have a bunch of lands, pretty straightforward here. Some protection spells in the effort to make it so that Duke Ulder doesn't get killed or countered. Bunch of ramp, again, trying to get to Duke Ulder, along with Professional Facebreaker. And then down here we have Sword of Feast and Famine as yet another piece of equipment. And then we've got a bunch of removal, a lot of it in the form of creatures with ETB triggers. So we've got Dwarger Hedge Mage, which is when it enters, you get to shatter if you control 2 mountains and destroy an enchantment if you control 2 plains. We've got Lorien, Plundering Barbarian, either makes a treasure or shatters. We've got, of course, Skyclave Apparition, and then, as previously mentioned, the Terror of the Peaks to burn stuff, along with Fury. We do need some ability to kill permanents that are not based on creatures entering. So, for example, let's say our opponent has like a Torpor Orb or something. Obviously, cards like Lorien wouldn't trigger, so we do need at least one way of killing those things in a way that is not a creature. A little bit of stacks, not too much, in order to keep our opponents in check, mainly the Rule of Laws off of things like Archon of Emeria. And then we've got some tutors with Imperial Recruiter and Recruiter of the Guard to go fetch up either combo pieces or just other relevant value cards. And then some various other creatures, so some creatures that can give the initiative, and of course when the Myriad tokens enter the battlefield, they all additionally trigger the initiative. So we can journey through the initiative dungeon much faster. And we also have Owl the Dawnsky so that the legendary tokens can die and trigger this. And then finally, Agris Coast Eternal Soldier, whenever it becomes the target of an ability that targets only it, so the Myriad trigger off of Duke Ulder, you can pay 1 and a hybrid Boros, and if you do, you copy the ability for each other creature you control that ability could target, and each copy targets a different one of those creatures. So with Agris Coast out, you can pay 2 and Myriad all of your guys instead of only one of them. So again, we do have a little bit of some combo stuff with the Dualcaster Molten Dupe combo, along with some things that can generate infinite combat steps. But in general, we're mainly trying to play a value beatdown plan by duplicating our creatures to gain card advantage. And so with all that said, that is going to do it for Duke Ulder Ravengard in EDH.